What up, Z-Pack? It's your boy, Z-Dog-MD. Check it out. I tried going live a second ago. Facebook rejected me. You know why? Do you know why? Because I had 3 or 4 days off in the Grand Canyon reconnecting with the glory of nature. The glory of nature, right? And I'm back, energized, ready to talk about the most controversial issues of the day, with or without those two punks, Logan Stewart and Tom Heineber, who are off on their own little mini nature getaways with their loved ones. Who does that? It's Easter weekend, people. Wake up. The revolution is happening with or without you, people. All right? I'm not throwing away my shot. Anyways, sorry. Earlier I tried to go live and something happened with the Wi-Fi because I'm running from my phone. I have a special little microphone plug-in for my phone. I want you to tell me if this sounds good, worse, better, what's going on. And I'm going to convert it to the podcast, put it up on YouTube like I always do, because this is Incident Report, people, live. And today we're talking about harm reduction. Logan Stewart, haha, nature is amazeballs. You know, Logan, instead of sitting there commenting, you could have been here, okay, running this here board right here. Let me show you this here board, okay? This is the board that you're supposed to run, all right? What am I doing? I'm doing it all myself. Why? Because I'm Z frickin' Dog MD. And also, I'm desperate to reconnect with the Z-Pack since I've had no Wi-Fi of any consequence for the last several days. Do you understand what that's like for someone like me? I wanted to pull my hair out, but there's no hair to pull. So it was just this purgatory, and also nature, and also family, and also amazing. Grand Canyon, highly recommended. Go down, do the serious hikes. You will come back a changed human being, or dead, depending on how aggressive you are. Okay. I want to also figure out how to, the best way is going to be to look at comments today. I've got my wife's iPad here. So that's one possible way, and obviously this doesn't work because I got to turn it like this. There are some comments. So we're going to get your guys' voice involved a lot today because, again, there's no Tom and no Logan to interfere with you or to facilitate you for that matter. So what I wanted to talk about is interesting is as I was coming home, I was listening to this news report from my own great state of Nevada. Don't you dare call it Nevada, okay? Because that's what differentiates the locals from the people who are pretending to be locals. In Nevada, they are now going to be offering something first in the nation, which is a vending machine that dispenses syringe kits for the injection of illicit narcotics. Hold on, I'm going to close this door because my kids are coming in, and they're going to make a ruckus. And the process of closing this door, my friends, is likely to interrupt our Wi-Fi. That's the beautiful contradiction of life. By keeping out the little Z-pups, I also keep out the Wi-Fi signal, but we'll see how it works. So dispensing actual paraphernalia for the injection of what are currently illegal narcotic drugs in Nevada is a first in Las Vegas in particular. There are going to be 3 sites. These are vending machines that look very similar to candy vending machines. However, they require a special pass card that you have to register to get. Apparently, you don't need to give personal information, but you need to come to one of the facilities to register. So you have to contact, all right? When you get your card, you scan it, and you can get up to 2 of these kits a week. The kit apparently comes in a little box, and it contains a sterile syringe, some, obviously skin cleaning stuff, a wound care kit, actually, and I think some condoms or safe sex gear. So all that being said, you can tell what they are doing with these boxes is they're attempting to reduce potential harm that comes from intravenous drug use and also some ancillary stuff like safe sex, etc. The idea being that by providing clean needles, you will reduce the sharing of needles, which can lead to the acquisition, unfortunately, of potentially fatal or life-altering blood-borne infections such as hepatitis C, HIV, hepatitis B. And actually, one of the things that I thought about, too, because we saw this a lot at our county hospital, is subacute bacterial endocarditis and skin infections due to dirty needles and poor skin prep. So all those things, in theory, we might be able to ameliorate with the use of needle exchange programs. However, why hasn't this happened before? Tremendously controversial, and not just scientifically, controversial politically, ethically, morally. And that's what I want to talk about today, because in Incident Report, what we really want to dig into is what is the intersection of politics, medicine, science, health, all of that, and let's talk openly without having any safe spaces about what are the issues around that. So let's start by looking at a few comments, because I miss you guys a lot. Let's see what we got. Easter weekend, I'm an ENT student and I spent my Good Friday doing ER clinical rotation. LOL, I'm a glutton for punishment. Lizbeth Bushy. Yes, you are, Lizbeth. That sounds hurtful, but thank you for all you do on the front lines. Speaking of EMT, when we're talking about harm reduction, one of the pro side arguments for needle sharing programs, and in this case, a needle vending machine for people who are joining us late. We're talking about the Nevada program, first in the nation to offer clean needle vending machines to drug addicts who register. And they don't have to share personal information because, I mean, I imagine a lot of them are paranoid about that since what they are engaging in is a currently illegal activity. So when frontline emergency responders, police, EMT, et cetera, respond to these patients, sometimes there's a big danger of a needle stick for them because there's dirty paraphernalia laying around. Part of the idea with needle exchange programs is that you provide them a way of disposing of the needle, which comes with the kit, and it might technically be safer for not just the patient, but for first responders who might deal with these patients, including police officers who, because this stuff is illegal, are interfacing with this population routinely. Now, just to frame the problem again, pretty much all of us understand that we're in this big opioid epidemic right now, and between the heroin and the gateway to the heroin, which is the prescription drug abuse, we're in a mess and people are dying. And so part of the idea behind this concept of harm reduction is to say, look, okay, we understand drugs are going to be done. We're not saying you should do drugs. We're not saying it's a good thing. We're not saying legalize it. We're saying since it's going to be done, maybe we can save society and money and save lives if we actually allow it to be done as safely as possible within the construct of what's going on. This is a similar argument to dispensing, over-the-counter Narcan or making Narcan easily available. And let's take the opposite side of this, okay? Why would you not do that? Well, I think the biggest argument, and we'll forget about the scientific arguments, but the biggest argument is an ethical, moral, judgmental one, which is you are tacitly acknowledging and normalizing the use of illicit drugs that are life-threatening and dangerous and damaging to society. All right, so that's one potential downside. The other downside is that you're promoting the ease of use for drug users. So in other words, by allowing the needles to be there, maybe a drug that wouldn't have been injected is now injected. So that's another argument. Another argument is that you're using taxpayer dollars to fund this. So why should the taxpayers fund people's poor decision-making mistakes, right? So these are arguments that are made. I'm not making a value judgment on the arguments. These are the arguments that are made. And that locals in areas where you're funding these programs feel like there's going to be an influx of drug addicts. So it's a sort of a not in my backyard kind of deal. Now, my take on the downsides, and we'll talk about the pros in a second, my take on the downsides are that this is very much a political elephant decision. So if your elephant is a little bit more on the we need structures in society and moral constructs and codes of ethics, et cetera, that allow society to remain cohesive and unified, and there's a deference to authority and other things, and many people have this moral flavor in their elephant, in their unconscious decision making, right? Then these needle exchange programs feel to the elephant disgusting, because what you're saying is go ahead and break the law, go ahead and do something dangerous, go ahead and contribute to the destruction of society and moral fabric, and we're going to use our taxpayer money, right, which was taken from us, to fund this. Now and you got to understand, I think for the liberal side of the crowd, you got to understand that this is a very rational viewpoint for many people in this country who feel that there's a certain moral authority, moral fabric that needs to be respected. Otherwise, everything falls apart. Okay, so that I think is the crux in my mind of opposition to needle programs. Some people cite some scientific stuff saying, no, actually HIV rates increase in needle sharing, et cetera, et cetera. So that's very controversial. And I think most of the evidence so far that's been reviewed, and there are some exceptions, shows that needle sharing programs, for every dollar that you spend on them, you save $6 in a prevented case of HIV, hepatitis C, et cetera. So they may actually save money, they may actually save lives. And what the European experience has been is that in needle sharing programs, patients who normally wouldn't interface with the help system, with the recovery treatment rehab system, are more likely to interface with that system when using needle sharing programs, because part of the algorithm for this needle sharing program is they have to go into a space where counselors are available, where rehab treatment options can be discussed, et cetera. So they're forced to kind of interact with the space. Now, remember, if you're doing a trial about this, remember that it's somewhat confounded by the fact that people who would use needle exchange programs, all right, are artificially selected for people who actually care about being alive. So these are people who maybe are addicted, but they understand the dangers of heroin and injection use and infection. So they might be a little more educated, they might be a little bit newer to the game, etc. So you're enriching in that population who would choose needle exchange, right? As opposed to somebody who's really at bottom, who doesn't care, is going to share needles, is almost suicidal, or just doesn't, it's not on their radar. They're so their addiction has been is taken over everything. So that's one way when you're measuring these things. It's a little bit of a confounder, right? So now, see, Bobby Harold says no matter how you look at it, it is enabling. Bobby Harold. Okay, so here's a big argument against that the anti-needle exchange group says you're enabling this horrible behavior. Well, yes, but here's a counter question. These guys are addicted to they have a serious disease of addiction that is not going to go away with a magic wand. So either are we actually enabling it? In other words, are we making that addiction worse, or are we keeping them from further harm? And that's the fundamental question. Now, I would argue, because my elephant really feels like, okay, above all, you want to look at the bigger picture and see what harm you're doing in society as we try to figure out rehab structures, better legal structures for dealing with addiction and drug use, changing the way we use and abuse prescription medications and dispense them, all of those things. In the meantime, this is a way to save and I'm looking at the bottom line, save our system lots of money, because one diagnosis of HIV then enters the county system, and we're all paying for that either way, regardless of what you feel compassionately towards the victim of the disease, right? Who, again, elephants differ on this. So some elephants will say, it's a choice. You went down the hole, you deal with it. And others will say, not really a choice, sum total of poverty, bad environment, bad luck, etc., and we should be compassionate and try to help. So again, that argument aside, the bottom line argument really is one that tips me, although I tend to feel towards the compassionate side and say, you know what, it's very easy to go down these paths, and a lot of professionals have gone down these paths. And I'm not a big believer in human free will. I'm a believer in systems that encourage behavior. And so that's me. But again, so my stance is harm reduction is a good thing. And the pros on this are basically, and then we'll look at some comments. The pros on this are basically, well, you're going to reduce the risk of these contaminated needles being shared. So you're going to prevent cases of HIV, hepatitis C, hepatitis B, and in my opinion, even bacterial endocarditis, wound infection, sepsis, all these other things that I see at county hospital all the time that are a major source of morbidity, mortality, and expense. So that's one argument. Second argument is that you're going to reduce this idea that law enforcement and first responders, EMT, et cetera, are going to be infected by some dirty shared paraphernalia, because part of the idea is that disposal methods are given along with the drugs. Now, do people actually use them? Has this actually been shown? I don't have data on that, and I haven't had a chance to look at it since I just got back from the Grand Canyon. If you have an answer to that, let me know. I suspect nobody does yet. And then that when you do needle exchange, right, many of the centers that offer needle exchange, including the one in Nevada that we're talking about with this dispensing machine, which to me, honestly, all this does to me, you know what, let me get back to this, because I want to tell you why the machine is unique. In other words, why is the needle dispensing machine different than standard needle exchange programs, which are quite rare in the US, but are common in Europe and other places, right? And remember, this was illegal. Federal funds could not be used for any of this until last year. And that's why we're having this conversation now. You still cannot use federal funds to buy the actual needle exchange stuff, but you can fund the program that supports it, and that's new. And again, these are very political things, because certain elephants that are more conservative will say, no, you're enabling, this is bad, it's going to lead to the destruction of moral authority, etc. And whereas more liberal elephants are all, no, these are all victims and we need to give them every chance to succeed, etc. So it has a very political bent to it, but we're trying to dig through that, feel that out, and also look at the science. So the other, the idea that you come into these entities and then you're exposed to HIV counselors, to drug treatment counselors, they're there in the same space, means that your chances of, again, I'm a believer that the system around you influences your behavior. And if you're an elephant, an unconscious series of conditioned hopes, dreams, fears, and reactions, with a little rider who's spinning explanations after the fact, the path that you're walking on matters. So if your path is surrounded by HIV and drug counselors and you're forced to go through that path to get your needles, you're going to have a chance of actually interacting with them and having a life-changing experience where you go into rehab, right? And this has been shown in the European experience, which is why I think the machine is interesting, but we're going to talk about that. So, and then the idea that, the programs will actually be associated with actual aggressive rehab and treatment. So there's more opportunities to get plugged into those things than there would be otherwise, including the HIV counseling. I think that those are the pros for needle exchange. Harm reduction again, all right? Now, before we get into the machine, let's read some comments because I've been neglecting you guys. I've got my wife's iPad here, so hopefully I can actually see comments. Okay, Manvir Mahal says, they did a program here in Vancouver where they provide clean needles as well as supervision to ensure that no ODs occur. And the statistics show that it is safer, and I believe they're thinking about opening another one. So imagine that where they're actually supervising the injection. And I've heard about this in Europe as well, where, again, you're going to see if someone ODs and you're going to react pretty quickly. Now, with that really interesting a very aggressive harm reduction strategy, are we then giving some validity to the view that now you're really enabling because you're basically babysitting while people inject, right? Joe Richards says, I see no downside to this. Belgium is a pretty good source for data on these things. They've done a lot of very progressive things in this area. So Joe, I think looking at the European experience is important. I don't think that it's really that different than what a U.S. experience would be if we implemented it correctly. That's my feeling. And again, if you're getting the sense now that I'm pro harm reduction strategies, I am. And I'm also pro accountability. I'm also pro maintaining the moral fabric of society and enforcing laws and things like that. But between you and me, I think that our drug laws have failed. I think the drug war has failed. It's been a colossal failure. And we need to rethink all of that because it hasn't been a compassionate response to an increasing problem. It hasn't been successful. And all it's done is enable more crime, more disease, more death. That's my strong stance on that. You may disagree with me, and that's okay. That's why we're here, to have a discussion. They're going to do it regardless, says Jessica McIntosh. We pay for their funerals too, so what's the difference? I mean, that's a pretty forward statement on that. I'm a pessimist, but the needle thing is going to be used multiple times. What addict shoots up twice a week? Lori Wilcox. So that's a great point, Lori. So these machines in Nevada allow you to get 2 kits. Now, I don't know how many syringes are in each kit, but you're right. What addict shoots up twice a week? So they're going to be reused anyways. The question is, are you reducing the amount of reuse this way and the amount of sharing by at least allowing them to clean needles a week? Or is there more in the pack? That I don't know the answer to. Now, the problem with this needle exchange machine, it's a vending machine, is that, obviously it's going to, once you register for your card, you have to walk the facility to use it, but you're going to use it fairly anonymously. And so that accountability to another human being where you're getting the exchange isn't there. And I'm a big believer. This is another thing that I think was really, really sort of brought home to me in a lot of psychology I've been reading recently. Humans really are a species that relies on social accountability. And when you take that away, they behave in ways that are very regressive. And so when you actually put a human being in front of another human being and they have to look someone in the eye and get their needle, it's a very different experience. And it has a little effect, even if it's tiny. Now, making it a machine means you're going to reduce harm by allowing lower barrier to entry to get the needles, but are you going to take away one of the key components of needle exchange, which is that face-to-face where now, they're going to interact with a human being and possibly have some life-changing interaction where their elephant and rider are walking on a path and the path has this person in there that wants to help them and something could happen, right? Just by putting that person in the path. Let's read some more comments. By the way, let me know, how's the sound on this microphone? So this is a new Shure microphone that plugs right into my iPhone. Since I'm not doing the full rig today, I wanted to use a microphone that allows me to convert this into a podcast afterwards, the Incident Report podcast with decent audio quality. So let me know if it sounds like crap or if you can't hear it. Let's scroll down here. Woo, lots of comments. You guys are doing great. Where do the sharps go after use? I worry about incidental exposure with improperly handled dirty sharps. Sue Lewis. So, Sue, part of the kit with this vending machine in Nevada is a sharps disposal kit. So it would be in a safe spot. Now, I want to get some of the people who are working on this with the Southern Nevada Health District on the show when we get Logan and Tom back, because I think having this discussion with them would be amazing to see. They've been waiting a long time to do this, but they've been trying to do this for a long time. The Review Journal here in Las Vegas just did a piece on this where they were talking about it. I'm going to pull that up right now because I want to read to you some of this. Here's a quote. Having access to clean syringes is a harm reduction approach that's going to allow people to protect themselves against getting communicable diseases like HIV and hepatitis C, says Chelsea Cheatham, program manager for Track B Exchange at a news conference to unveil the machine. So, I mean, this has got high hopes for people. In fact, another quote, this is like our heart and soul. Seeing this happen is like a dream come true, says Michelle Jorge, HIV lab director at Community Counseling Center. Now, again, I think people who believe in harm reduction really think they're going to help people with this. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. Shauna Hines, in going with that, I think we should give at least give compassion a chance, since cold indifference has been a failure. Well, so compassion is love in the face of suffering, and is a needle sharing exchange program compassionate? Now, I would argue strongly that it is, because it says, look, I'm not going to judge you for criminal activity. I'm not going to judge you for your drug use. I'm going to help you not die by using this strategy. I don't think, on balance, I'm enabling you any more than you would have already been enabled to do drugs, because you're going to figure out a way to do it, because addiction is an incredibly strong disease. And so I think it's a loving, compassionate act to do something like this with my taxpayer money, funding it, because I can either fund the taxpayer money that way, or I can fund other strategies. But this to me seems like a pretty high yield approach, while we figure out treatment, prevention, all the other things that go with this, that if we don't do those, then we're really acting not compassionately. Russell Watson, this probably would have spared me from getting hepatitis C and many people I transmitted it to. So Russell, I think he's commented before. Thank you, Russell, for your comment. Was a former injection drug user and hepatitis C positive. And so he's one of the examples, again, of someone who can speak to this from firsthand experience. Thanks, Russell. I'm going to try to read more comments from you. Here's another one. It's very compassionate, far more than the current state of how healthcare treats addicts. Well, I agree with that, Russell. And again, I think there are other people's elephants who are very much on the personal accountability side and feeling that this is a choice and not a disease and so on. And we have to respect that belief system, because it comes from a kind of an elephant unconscious moral judgment that all of us have a certain palette of morality. That's how our brain is wired. And I think it's just as valid as any other palette. It's a question of then, can we have these discussions and say, well, okay, we may differ in our moral palette on this, but can we show data that says that it actually saves money, improves outcomes, et cetera? And then can we, in conjunction of that, do something that actually improves accountability, improves treatment options, improves prevention, et cetera? Let's see. Rachel Hignite says, I agree with any effort to decrease exposure to cross-contamination, since we as a country can't seem to come together to reform to decrease drug abuse, prevention, and increase treatment. At least we can do is increase ways to decrease exposure through needle sharing. Well, to me, it's a very cheap way and a very quick way and a very actionable way to do something right now while we do the other things, because you're right, it's taken forever to get the other things happening. It's taken forever to even realize we've come to a crisis, right? Where the Surgeon General's writing letters and things like this. It's a major issue. More comments. I'm gonna go back a little and look some. Joyce Tribbett, I have family members addicted. One lost his life. Addicts will use whether there is clean needles or not. Having more contact to offer help and offer it often is good. So Joyce, this speaks to my analogy again of elephant rider and path. Let me say it one more time, because I think it's important. There's a lot of evidence that human beings are mostly unconscious, intuitive, emotional creatures that act from conditioned behavior. That's the elephant we ride on our primitive brain that's been around for millions of years. And a little rider sits on top, which is our conscious strategizer, our thinker, our awareness, right? And that's really the slave to this sort of emotional engine. And it's a press agent, it's the lawyer for the elephant, right? But both of those entities, the elephant and the rider, walk on a path. And if you think about addiction as the elephant really is addicted, for whatever reasons, past trauma, exposure, genetics, it loves heroin, and it's not going to quit if you just let it do its thing. The rider then spins a million reasons why it's not quitting, or why it got addicted, or excuses for why it's a victim, etc. But it's walking on a path, and if the path is dirty needles shared in a park somewhere with a homeless person who has HIV, that's going to lead to disaster. If the path is strewn with people who want to help it, who want to give it options other than the downward spiral, who respect it as a human being and have compassion towards it, there are the chances that that elephant is going to encounter something that's going to resonate with it and its rider, and it's going to do something. It's going to get treatment, it's going to get help, it's going to find someone who cares and is going to change its life. And that, to me, is the most compelling argument for harm reduction, needle sharing, treatment programs, etc. Scroll down here. And thank you, Russell, for your comments as a former addict and someone with hepatitis who has suffered the consequences of addiction. Russell says, again, once it has happened to you or been a big part of your life, it's very easy to see it's a disease. No normal person would do the irrational things we do as users. So, guys, how many of you, come on in, how many of you have seen in your practice, whether you're, hey, Z-Pup, oh, we're talking about intravenous drug use.
What?
For the podcast listeners, the Z-Pup just walked in. What were you guys playing with? Hot or water balloons? Mm-hmm. Did you nail your sister real good with that?
I popped a balloon over her head.
Sweet! Was she like, you got me all wet, or was she laughing?
She was laughing.
Sweet!
Have you seen Mom, though?
I haven't seen Mom. Mom is avoiding me because she's been stuck with me for 4 days. She's ready to punch me.
Have you seen the iPad?
I have the iPad right here. I need it for comments. Your iPad?
Yeah.
You mean the old one?
Yes.
I have not. I'm sorry.
Oh.
All right. Can I finish my talk?
Okay. Bye.
All right. Bye.
Who is that?
Huh? It's a woman who's addicted to drugs and is injecting heroin. Do you know what that is?
No.
Good. You won't know for many years, and you'll never know if I have my way.
Okay.
See you, sweetie.
Bye.
Close the door, please. Sorry, guys. That's the Z-Pup, and hey, when she's ready to bust in, she's ready to bust in. I don't lock the door because I am not that BBC guy. Like, if my kid wants to come in here and be on the show, she's gonna be on the show. So we were talking about Russell and saying how it's easy to see it as a disease, because how many of us in healthcare have experienced really irrational, horrible behavior from drug addicts? Me, everybody, and it's such horrible behavior that it would be irrational to consider it a choice. To me, it is a function of their disease that they're behaving in a way that their elephant is just doing whatever it takes, and their little rider is spinning whatever lies and manipulations need to happen to get those drugs. And former addicts understand this, and they feel it, and they know it. Linda Weinhart-Jones, I ask you again, Doc, to educate those that think Narcan is not a good idea, that it saves lives. So, Linda, I'm a fan of making Narcan available. I think that, again, if you're talking about saving lives of people with disease, then you have to do what you can. Now, people will disagree with me and say I'm enabling, and I've actually had people comment on this very site who are of the extreme elephant that says people with addiction are making a choice and they should die. And I've heard that, and giving them Narcan they think is an immoral act because you're allowing someone to live who ought to die. I have heard this comment, and people do believe this. And I'm not going to make a comment on that. I will just say that I agree. I agree with you that Narcan should be offered easily, and people should be trained to use it because, again, we're trying to keep people alive and also prevent the system from incurring more cost. If you're just purely in a capitalistic state of mind, you could say, look, man, if I have to end up taking somebody, a guy by ER with an overdose to the emergency department multiple times, that costs a lot more money because undoubtedly they're uninsured than it does giving them freaking cheap Narcan and letting them not die and not end up in the emergency department, right? And you can make the same argument, supervised drug use in these needle sharing programs where they prevent, keep you from ODing. Morally, very questionable in the sense of are you enabling, but practically could be a very, very useful harm reduction strategy because these patients cost a ton of money. Not only that, but they fill up our emergency departments. They make it very hard for throughput and staffing and all the other things that we struggle with at trying to build Health 3.0. So is it a 3.0 thing to do needle sharing? I'm going to go on record and say yes. Is it a 3.0 thing to allow Narcan because it changes the path that the elephant and the rider are walking on? I would say yes. And you can disagree with me in the comments, and I'll look at them. If I can't see them now, I'll look at them later for sure. Christian Castile, I'm pro harm reduction, but the problem is that we have to convince large amounts of people that addiction is a disease. I know nurses and docs that refuse to accept this. They will never find value in harm reduction if they don't accept the disease model of addiction. So I believe in the disease model of addiction because I've seen enough addiction. But however, I've also heard from a lot of healthcare people who really, having seen a lot of addiction, they really don't believe it's a disease. They believe it's a choice, and they believe it's a bad choice made by bad people. Now, again, I'm going to say this. Both sides of this argument need to stop being so judgy McJudgy pants of the other side, because the reason people make these value judgments is it's not often a conscious, malicious decision to be mean or to be overly soft and squishy. It is a function of how our elephants, our unconscious, emotional, intuitive, moral reasoning engine, make decisions. And all of us have different flavors of morality that we're drawing from with our elephant. And it's not really a conscious thing. You can change it with a lot of work and persuasion, but it's not a conscious thing. So if you think that these are choices and you have that degree of judgment, that may come from some deep conditioning on your elephant. And that's just how it is. That's how you are. That's how you're going to see the world. I may see the world differently. I actually do. It just so happens that I do. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to look at you as some kind of uncompassionate monster. I'm going to go, okay, so that person sees the world this way. So how can we come to an agreement on how to do something actionable without violating the sense that we actually respect each other's sense of what morality is? And that involves talking. It involves also coming from a place of respect, which you almost never find on the internet, except occasionally in these hallowed halls right here, Z-Pack, which is why I love doing this show, because actually oftentimes, and this obviously isn't exclusively true, and we'll see sniping back and forth, but oftentimes people will have really high-level discussions in a way that you will never see in the comment sections to other things. And so I'm very proud of what is built here as a forum for people to discuss things of different political, moral, ethical, scientific opinions. It's a great place to do that. All right, guys, on that note, let's see what time we're at here. 30 minutes. I think we should wrap it up. I'm going to read a couple more comments. Nicole Magas. You talk to Z-Pups about addiction is not condoning it. You're educating her. I believe people with this addiction deserve education and help. I do not believe this is enabling them. They likely hate being addicted. Well, so my feeling with kids and how to talk to them about addiction is just be honest with them and say, look, I mean, I have talked to Z-Pup about this. She's 9 years old, but she's asked me these questions because it comes up in movies and at friends at school and when she hears me talking. And I say, this is what it is. Some medicines that people take are against the law. Some are not against the law, but people can become addicted to them the same way you really like candy and snacks and you eat one potato chip and you just can't stop, because I've seen it, little Z-Pup. You will eat the entire box because it's a kind of addiction. You can't help yourself and your brain just goes crazy, and that's what addiction is like. And the problem is with medicine and these drugs that are illegal, the reason they're illegal is people can die from taking too much and they become hooked, and it can become very dangerous, and then they start committing crimes to get more of it, because imagine it's like the potato chips but times 1,000,000, and you're so desperate for this drug, and nothing that you can do in your life feels like it's worth living until you get another dose of this drug. And that's what it's like. It's like nothing has hope at all. That's what it's like to be addicted. And until you experience it, you'll never know. And here's the thing, Z-Pup, I don't ever want you to experience it. That's why you never go down that path. That's why you stay on the other side of things and understand that it's very dangerous and that sometimes it can go from being a choice to not being a choice. And that's where you need to be safe and sound. And that's why we as parents are going to try our best to educate you and support you and answer your questions. But we're also going to beat the crap, no, not physically. We are going to clown punch you if you ever go near any drugs like that without first getting some for daddy so we can do them together and get high AF. I'm kidding. On that note, guys, it's been real on a Saturday. I'm going to try to do Against Medical Advice without Logan and Tom tomorrow. I'm going to try to get Logan by phone to teach Mrs. Dog to run the board. She still won't be on the show because she has no desire to be famous or infamous. But we might talk about, I don't know what tomorrow, maybe female and male circumcision, although that's wow. Might be fun though. Anyway, so join us and watch last week's because you can get continuing medical education. Go to the website, AMA, it's zdogmd.com/AMA-006. Our episode 6 has an hour of CME or CE. doctors, nurses, PAs. You can try to get credit no matter who you are, see what happens. And I didn't say that, by the way. And what else? Go to the podcast. This will be up on the podcast. Rate, review, subscribe, and we out. Happy Easter, guys. Peace.